Hello, everyone. My name is Anthony Mills. I'm the Executive Director of Global Innovation Institute. I want to welcome you to our webinar today. This is the September 2024 webinar. As many of you know, Global Innovation Institute is the world's leading professional certification, business accreditation, and membership organization in the field of innovation. And we have individuals who are certified all over the world in every major nation, and we have businesses who are accredited all over the world. And we work very hard to continue to promote the knowledge of innovation and corporate innovation and what it takes to make organizations successful in that area. And thus we have this monthly webinar. So welcome to the September 2024 webinar. What I'd like to do now is to introduce our guest today and tell you about him. And after I introduce him, I will turn over the presentation to him. So our guest today is Dr. Bensaou. Dr. Bensaou is Professor of Technology Management and Professor of Asian Business and Comparative Management at INSEAD in Fontainebleau, France, where from 2018 to 2020, he also served as the Dean of Executive Education. He was furthermore a visiting associate professor at the Harvard Business School from 1998 to 1999. He was a senior fellow at the Wharton School of Management for 2007 to 2008, a visiting scholar at the Haas School of Business at UC Berkeley for 2013 to 2015, and a visiting professor at Kobe University for 2021 to 22. Also a visiting professor at Oyama Gakuen University.
Oyama Gakuen, yes.
Yes, thank you. Where he taught his course on information technology and corporate transformation, and a visiting professor at Keio Business School.
Keio Business School, yeah.
In Tokyo, Japan, where he has most recently been teaching in the executive program in Japanese. Professor Bensaou is a leading expert on innovation and how to build, maintain, and enhance an organization's collective innovative capabilities. He's been consulting since 1993 for various Asian, European, and U.S. businesses. In 2023, he was nominated for the Thinkers 50 Innovation Award, while in 2022, his book, Built to Innovate, Essential Practices to Wire Innovation into Your Company's DNA, was selected as one of the Thinkers 50 top 10 management books for that year. And he's been listed in the Who's Who in the World since 1998. At INSEAD, Professor Bensaou teaches courses in both English and French on innovation, blue ocean strategy and value innovation, competitive strategy, information technology, and comparative management. He's also developed two new MBA courses at INSEAD, namely Managing Network Organizations and Understanding Japanese Business. His research and teaching activities focus on 5 areas, namely how to create innovating capabilities and competencies as a way to build an innovative organization and culture. Number 2, blue ocean strategy and value innovation, implementation and rollout processes across the whole organization. Number 3, how to build social capital within firms. Number 4, new forms of organizations, in particular network corporations, strategic alliances, joint ventures, and value-adding partnerships. And number 5, the impact of digital technologies on innovation. He addresses these issues from an international comparative perspective, with a special focus on Japanese organizations. His research on buyer-supplier relations in the U.S. and Japanese auto industries won him the Best Doctoral Dissertation Award in the field of information systems and a finalist award for the Free Press Award for Outstanding Dissertation Research in the field of business policy and strategy. His cases on innovation won the 2006, 2008, and 2009 ECCH Best Case Awards with Professors Kim and Malborn at INSEAD. Professor Bensaou is an award-winning author. He's published papers in Academy of Management Journal, Management Science, Information Systems Research, Organization Science, Strategic Management Journal, the Journal of International Business Studies, Harvard Business Review, and Sloan Management Review. He's also authored numerous books and conference proceedings, and he's been a member of the editorial boards of Information Systems Research, MIS Quarterly, and MISQ Executive. His newest book, Built to Innovate, Essential Practices to Wire Innovation into Your Company's DNA, was published in the fall of 2021 by McGraw-Hill. And that book was based on 20 years of researching, teaching, and consulting in innovation. And during his research, Professor Bensaou studied close to 100 companies around the globe, across different industries, from startups in Silicon Valley to large industrial conglomerates. It was that research that inspired this book, where he develops a new narrative on innovation. In particular, Professor Bensaou explains in detail in this book his systematic approach, which defines specific innovative practices and roles for employees at each level of the organization, offers tools and process methodology for innovating, and presents a host of vivid case studies that illustrate the dramatic benefits possible. Academically, Professor Bensaou holds a DEA in mechanical engineering from the Institut National Polytechnique de Grenoble in France, an engineering diploma, a master's level engineering diploma in civil engineering from École Nationale de TPS in Lyon, France, an MA in management science from Hitotsubashi University in Tokyo, Japan, and a PhD in management from MIT Sloan School of Management in Cambridge, Massachusetts in the United States. Professor Bensaou grew up in France, but has also lived and was educated in Japan, and he and his wife, Masako, currently live in Paris, and their sons live in Tokyo, Paris, and London, respectively. So today, Professor Bensaou is going to be talking to us about how organizations can hardwire innovation into their DNA. He'll share his finding that innovation is not just about major disruption, but also systematic and continuous innovation. Here, he challenges the notion that all innovation is accomplished by certain specialists in the organization or by a genius leader. Instead, innovation is everybody's business. Every member of the organization can contribute. He'll also talk about the influence of middle management innovation and how roles and tasks need to be clearly defined with embedded processes for innovation to succeed. As innovation leaders, this is incredibly important to us because we all need to know how to hardwire innovation into our own organizations so that we too can succeed in this area. So with that, please join me now, if you will, in welcoming Professor Ben Bensaou. Ben, the floor is all yours.
All right, thank you. Let me start sharing my presentation and make sure that is it showing, Anthony?
Yes. Yes.
All right, very good. All right, very good. Well, thank you, Anthony. This is a very thorough introduction. I'm very appreciative for you to actually invite me to do the webinar. I don't know if it's good morning, good afternoon, or good evening for everyone. I understand that there's a range of participation around the globe. So today, as Anthony just explained, what I want to do is to introduce you to a different narrative about on innovation, and I want to kind of show how you can hardwire innovation in the company's DNA. First off, let me give you a short introduction to where does the research behind all this. So as Anthony was already explaining, I spent all in all about 20 years doing research, teaching, and consulting on innovation. And I've studied close to 100 organizations around the world in the public and private sector across many different industries. I studied startups in the Silicon Valley when I was at UC Berkeley. I studied small and medium-sized enterprises all the way to large industrial conglomerates like those that you find in Japan, in Korea, or in Turkey. And along the way, I came across some fascinating companies that have proactively transformed themselves into major innovation powerhouses. And that's basically what I wanted to do with the book, was to try to tell the story of these companies, document some of the key insights. And of course, as an academic, I wanted to codify what I had learned in the form of new frameworks, new tools, concepts, and actually I developed a toolkit that can be shared with a wider audience. As my surprise when I studied this organization is that my surprise was that many of these organizations that were highly innovative actually were old established companies operating in very traditional businesses. And so what I wanted to do is to really codify what was happening there. So let me ask you this question. what names, I mean, names of people, companies, products, brand names come to mind when you hear the word innovation? It is actually the question I keep asking to people around the world. So, I mean, we could do this maybe with the application Mentimeter, but I would invite you to maybe just take a few seconds to write down on a piece of paper or to think in your head about what names would come to your mind. And then I'll just show you now what are the typical answers I get. So I'll give you a few seconds to write down some of the names. And so this is what I typically get. So what I found is that when we think about innovation, we typically think about what I call the usual suspects. High-tech companies like Apple, Amazon, and Tesla, or entertainment companies like Netflix or Marvel. Another common perception is that innovation is driven by one individual who comes up with a breakthrough product or a new disruptive business model. Now, true, many of these companies have been created and driven by one individual. However, if you think about it, not every company has the chance to have a Steve Jobs on their staff. And the very idea that innovation is a domain, is mostly the domain of some innovation superhero is actually not true. And this is one of the myths, one of the three myths actually that I want to debunk today. And I want to replace this myth by the reality that innovation is everybody's business. Yes, I mean, if you think about it, anybody in the company can contribute to innovation. So what I've noticed, speaking about innovation to people around the world, is that innovation, the word itself, is very intimidating, especially for people on the front line. And I also noticed that many of the people who come to an innovation training program like we do at INSEAD, they often believe that their boss expects them to come up with a breakthrough new product or discover a new market space. They feel that the pressure is on and they actually hate this. So what happened, I mean, this is completely serendipity, but what happened is that one day I started to avoid using the word innovation when I teach. Instead, I refer to innovating, not the noun, but the verb, or I simply use the word to innovate. And then something curious happened. I started to see that the tension and the stress in the room started to actually diminish. The reason, I think, is that innovating does not necessarily imply an outcome or a result. Instead, it refers to a process, an activity, a set of behaviors that anyone can learn and practice. So for me, innovating, the way I define it in the classroom, is simply about looking for new ideas, developing them, testing them, with no guarantee as to you will find. This approach I found is actually very good at releasing the tension in the room, and it kind of gives permission to anyone in the room to try their hands at innovating. After all, very few of us are geniuses who can kind of produce a breakthrough insight on command. However, when we think about it, engaging in innovating activities does not require any special talent. Innovating can be learned. It can be guided by tools, processes and techniques and structured, very structured processes. So let me try this metaphor. If innovation is the tip of the iceberg, of an iceberg, this impressive peak rising above the water level, then innovating represent what is happening beneath the surface. This represents the collective capability of everyone in the organization. This is where this collective capability of everyone in the organization lies, ready, waiting to be activated. So this is my focus. My focus is not on innovation, the output, but on the process, building the innovating capabilities within the organizations. And what I want to do now is to try to describe how you can tap into and leverage this collective capability of everyone in the organization, just like some of the companies that I studied. So let me give you a couple examples just to kind of anchor the conversation of companies and what I've seen happen. So let me mention about Starwood. Most people might know Starwood, the global hospitality company. A few years ago, they organized a global conference in Paris for 700 of their frontline hotel managers. So first, we introduced them to some basic concepts and tools on innovation. And then what we did is that we divided the 700 people in 64 teams. We gave them metro tickets, subway tickets, cameras, and notebooks, and we sent them to roam the streets of Paris to try to capture some images, experiences, and insights into the life of ordinary travelers. 3 hours later, they came back with some remarkable insights and stories. They generated a total of 1,700 new ideas. Now, granted, many of these were focused on small incremental improvements to existing processes and services. But the fact is that a few of them became the foundation of some new global initiative. Just like this new marketing program they called Fantastic. This is a program to create special family packages which are based on research, not on adults, but on what children expect from a great hotel experience. Now, what I want to be clear about is that none of these 700 people involved in this experience, in this experiment, were specialists of innovation. But everyone realized that by simply stepping away from your daily routines and immersing themselves into the world of their customers, suddenly opened up a floodgate of fresh ideas. Let me try another example before we move to some of the lessons. Fiskars. This is Fiskars. This is a 400-year-old manufacturing company based in Finland. They're best known for their iconic orange scissor. They manufacture cutting tools, tableware, and outdoor equipment for gardening and other purposes. And Fiskars, for me, is a very good example of an old established company that was able to enter an entirely new industry. And their approach to innovation is very methodical, continuous, and systematic. Now, as an example, to better understand what we call the job to be done by their customers, they conducted an in-depth ethnographic exploration of their gardening customers. So they looked at what happens in the life of a home gardener, what happens before, during, and after they use Fiskar tools. And as a result of this research, they made a significant discovery. They realized that watering was an essential task, was an integral part of the experience of home gardeners. And they also realized that they themselves had the design capabilities and the technologies to come up and develop a highly differentiated solution to the watering problem of their customers. And this is how, instead of opting for, you might have seen this in your gardens, instead of opting for the conventional wall-mounted rack used to store the hose, they developed an all-in-one device which they call the water wheel. Now, this is a very innovative product which is fitted with wheels. It has 300-degree range of motion, and it's fitted for all sorts of accessories, for different purposes, like if you want to irrigate a plot for a long time, or you want to set up a play area for the kids on a hot summer day. Now, the water wheel went on to win many design awards, and it became a very profitable addition to Fiskar's product lineup. And by the way, this is only one of many instances I've seen during my research of Fiskar's very systematic and continuous approach to innovation. And this has established them in the industry as a very innovative and successful organization. So now the question is, how do we all become better at innovation? Now, to become better at innovation, we need a different narrative. Genius-led and disruptive innovation is very hard. And not every company can be Amazon or Apple or Tesla. I think we all get it. And this is the reason why I wanted to introduce a different narrative, a different way to think about innovation. First, we have, the three myths that we just talked about. The first myth is that innovation is driven by some innovation superhero. Well, that's not true. As we've seen with Starwood, anyone can innovate. You don't need any special talent. Innovation is for everyone in the organization. Anyone can innovate. The second myth, I would say, is that innovation is all about big bang, breakthroughs, and disruptive innovation. But then we have seen that this is not true. We have seen with Fiskars that big bang is not the only type of innovation. As you remember, Fiskars was able to enter a new industry which they were not playing in at all, thanks to their approach to innovation, which was very continuous and systematic innovation. The third myth is that innovation is driven by senior leaders or a small group of specialists in research and development. And then again, we could see that this is not true. Innovation is driven by the whole organization. And just the two examples I showed to you, for the sake of time, I couldn't introduce more examples, but just with these two examples, you can see that some of the heroes of innovation are those at the front line. The fourth part of the different narrative, the new narrative, is that in these innovative companies, innovation is not only happening internally, inside out, but also from the customers, outside in. It's all about discovering and addressing the new needs of customers, or what I call non-customers. And finally, the fifth component of the different narrative is that innovation is not all about startups and sexy high-tech companies. All organizations, even as I saw, government agencies or public service enterprises, all companies can innovate. So now, let's try to dig deeper and try to understand what do all these companies that I studied that were highly innovative, what do they have in common? If you will, if I were to kind of lift the hood of an highly innovative company, what would I see? And what I discovered is that these highly innovative companies operate with not one engine, but two engines, similar to those of a jet airplane. They have an execution engine, focused on implementing, executing the strategy of today. And they also have an innovating engine, which is focused on the strategy of tomorrow. It is about imagining, testing, developing the products, the processes, and the services of tomorrow. And these two engines operate in parallel, simultaneously, which means that every employee is given permission to also spend some time engaging in innovating activities. And this is totally part of their integral part of their job description, if you will. So the execution engine, as you may be familiar with, is focused on today's strategy, and it is all about competing. It is all about beating the competition. It is all about outperforming the competitors. And very naturally, because of this objective, it tends to be obsessed with a supply side view of the world. In contrast, what I found is that the innovating engine is much more focused on the customer, on trying to understand the customer, their pain point, their likes, dislikes, their wishes. And actually, I found also that people were generating great innovation ideas by looking not at only customers, but also non-customers. The typical approach in the execution engine is problem solving. It's very much about trying to find the optimal solution to an existing problem for the customers. In contrast, again, what I found is that in the innovating engine activities were much more focused on problem finding, identifying and searching for problems that the customer had. And then once you identify a new problem to be solved, then you can take this problem to the execution engine to be solved. So let's again, keep going deeper, and let me kind of try to highlight how do you create this innovating engine. So now, just to be sure, the way you can think about the innovating engine is it is a dedicated, concrete time and space, and this space and time is fully legitimized, it's fully protected, and individuals, every employee is given permission to spend some time on a regular basis operating in the innovating engine. And the innovating engine is the structure under which these innovating activities are developed and coordinated. So the innovating engine, just like you're, of course, very familiar with the execution engine. The execution engine, when we talk about it, we like to describe it in three components. Its governance structure, what's the structure of the engine? What are the underlying processes that regulate this engine, and what's its distinctive culture? So what I found is that the same way we describe the execution engine in terms of structure, process, and culture, I found that the innovating engine in these companies that I studied had also a structure, a governance structure, certain underlying processes, and a culture. So a very good example, let me start with, maybe describe a couple of these. Let me start with the structure. A good example of a governing, a governance structure for an innovating engine is what I found when I studied Bayer. As many of you are familiar with, Bayer has a long history of scientific achievements through their R&D capability. Yet in 2014, the board decided to create an additional structure. I mean, I call it the innovating engine, to leverage the capabilities of the 100,000 employees working in the company. So what did they do? So this is, a representation of the governance structure of the execution engine at Bayer. I mean, you may recognize the hierarchy, the vertical structure, the hierarchy, the silos, the control systems. What Bayer did is that they overlaid over this yellow structure another structure in blue, and this is the innovating engine's governance structure. And this structure is based on delegation, collaboration, and horizontal networks. So now we know the structure of the execution engine. So this structure is very different. So what did Bayer do? First, they made the whole board responsible for innovation. This is what I usually call the I committee, the innovation committee. It can be the whole board, or it can be a component, a sub-part of the board. And on top of this, they selected 80 senior managers, senior executives across different, all country regions and across the global functional areas. And they call them the innovation ambassadors. And these 80 innovation ambassadors, was there to support the board, the innovation board. And they spend most of their time with middle managers. They would be there to advocate for innovation. They would help them get training. They would sponsor projects. And they were basically kind of, advocating for innovation throughout the organization. Then Bayer trained and certified 1,000 innovation coaches, which were activated across the whole organization around the world. And then they developed WeSolve. WeSolve, oh, by the way, just to come back to the trainers, the coaches, I found a very similar structure in other organizations. For instance, BASF created a central unit where they would actually train and develop coaches, which they called Perspective. Samsung, for instance, had a whole building called the VIP Center, Value Innovation Project Center, where they would again have about 70 to 80 trained coaches who would help any team that wanted to innovate and to develop their new ideas. And I think BASF had something called I2S, Idea to Success. So many of these organizations had a central unit where any manager, middle manager, or frontline manager could call upon the resources to help them develop an idea that they were playing with. So then I said that they developed WeSolve, which is a digital platform. A digital platform where any employee within Bayer could post a problem or a question they have, or a problem that they were dealing with, and invite solutions or ideas, suggestions from across the whole organization. Now, they showed me some of the statistics, and it's quite fascinating. They had, at the time where I interviewed them, they had 40,000 people who had participated in WeSolve. Now, mind you, WeSolve is a platform in English, And they told me that they had at the time no more than 50,000 people who spoke English. But this is not the most impressive statistics. The most impressive one, and the one that they were very surprised by, is that they found out that two-thirds of the best solutions that were proposed on the platform came from a business unit or a functional area that was different from where the problem was posted in the first place, which testifies to the fact that they were able to tap into and leverage the capability across the whole organization. Now, having said that, this platform, this innovation platform, doesn't have to be necessarily digital. I found in other organizations where they created a similar space where people could share their problems, their solutions, and come together to discuss innovation. I mean, some companies would organize hackathons on a regular basis. Some would have like monthly innovation presentations or meetings, or some would have like brown bag lunches where people interested in innovation would come together. And then when it comes to what I call the toolkit, the platform is usually combined with a toolkit. I mean, different companies rely on different methodologies. I mean, I found some like design thinking, others embrace blue ocean strategy or lean startup. I have to admit that personally, I'm not dogmatic. I don't think that, on the contrary, I think that an organization should actually try and play with many of these different methodologies. After all, many of these methodologies have some sort of a diminishing return. When people get too used to a methodology, it's more and more difficult for them to find new ideas. So along the way, as I mentioned earlier, I developed a 7-step process methodology, which is a combination of blue ocean strategy, which was actually actively developed at INSEAD. It has components of design thinking and lean startup. Eduardo Bono's 7 thinking hats. And it is a very structured, tool-based, very simple but systematic and repeatable process methodology. And just for those who are interested in looking at the book, these are some of the companies, some of them are featured in the book that have kind of embraced some of this approach. Now let me turn to processes. As I said, the execution engine, remember the execution engine is also defined in terms of its processes and regulated by processes. I mean, we're all familiar with the strategy planning process, the budget and allocation process, the auditing process, and many operational processes. All these processes, if you will, define and regulate the execution engine. When it came to the innovating engine, I uncovered 3 processes. These are the reframing process, the creation process, the integration process, and the reframing process. The creation process, let me start with this one. The creation process is the process by which an organization generates new ideas on a continuous and systematic basis. The integration process is a process by which these ideas are connected to other ideas, other innovators, inside or outside the organization, and resources within the organization. The integration process also includes, the way by which ideas are winnowed, channeled, selected. Some get tested, prototyped, and the best ones, are selected and moved onto the execution engine to be implemented. The reframing process is the process by which the organization challenges its underlying assumptions, its shared assumptions, the way it thinks about which business we are in, who are our key customers, what are the needs of our customers. The reframing process also includes a new agenda, a set of stretch goals, stretch ambitions, and a sense of purpose, a sense of commitment to the future. You remember I mentioned that one of the key findings of the research was that everyone can contribute to innovation. It is exactly what I found, is that everyone in the organization, frontline employees, middle managers, and senior leaders all have a role to play and a contribution to make to specifically the innovating engine, which means that they all have a role to play in, in the creation, integration, and reframing process. So this gives a framework which I call the Build to Innovate, or BTI framework, and this is a description of the framework, and I just introduced in some of the cells some of the actions of behaviors for each of these types of employees within the organization. So this framework is a very action-oriented framework to help organizations who want to build their innovating capabilities from scratch, or maybe enhance or maintain those that they have. So for the sake of time, let me maybe just highlight 2 or 3 of these cells here and give you some examples about them. So let me start with the frontline employees. If you think about it again, the frontline employees are those who are in the best place to generate new ideas. Remember, the creation process is all about generating ideas. So the frontline are the ones who are on a daily basis facing customers and non-customers and hearing their pain points, their wishes and their dreams. So for them to be able to generate new ideas, they have to learn 3 fundamental skills. One, they have to learn how to listen to the voice of the customer. They have to learn how to listen to the silence, what I call the silence of the customer, what customers don't tell you. And they don't tell you because either they don't know about the problem or the need, or maybe they know about the need, but they never thought that it was your job to fix it for them. And of course, the third component is to learn how to generate insight from what I call non-customers. So just a quick example. This is Kortsa. This is a Turkish company, a manufacturer of fabric to reinforce tires. So they are in the tire business, and they are reinforced. They just make the fabric to reinforce tires. And to better understand the needs of their customers, what they started to do at a certain point is to actually send cross-disciplinary teams to their customer factories. So in the beginning, I remember they were telling me that these teams, with people from different departments within the organization, engineers, of course, people from finance, accounting, HR, IT, logistics, these teams would actually, in the early days, they would actually camp. They would have a tent and camp in the premises of the customers and just kind of roam around, observing operations and talking to people at the customer's factory. On one of these visits to a tire plant, one team had noticed that the employees at the factory were struggling to offload some of these rolls of fabrics from trucks. Now, they immediately realized that they were looking at a problem that the customers had never mentioned. They had never complained about it. Back home, Kortsa teams developed a very simple process methodology to actually handle the task. Then they actually introduced it and trained their customers' employees into the methodology, into the approach. And as a result, the customer was able to reduce the time and manpower needed for the task from 3 people over 90 minutes to 1 person with 12 minutes. And for me, this is a very good example of what I call listening to the silence of the customer. This is about, the customer didn't even know they had a problem and they were able to solve a problem. Think about it. If you solve a problem for a customer that they didn't know about, or a problem that they didn't think it was you had to solve it for them, they're going to like you. Now, as Anthony mentioned earlier, one of the most important findings in research was that middle managers were essential, were vital to innovation. Without them, innovation gets lost. Now, remember, middle managers, very typically, they are responsible for execution. They're not trained in innovation. And they don't have the same sense of urgency on innovation that, like, we talked about frontline people. They see the pain points and the dislikes of the customers every day. Or the senior leaders, they know that innovation is an imperative for survival. The middle managers, they're shielded from this direct pressure from outside. But at the same time, they are the ones who need to give permission to unlock all this capability that lies in the organization. They have the ones who have to give the permission to employees to engage in innovating activities. And they are also at the right level of elevation, if you will, in the organization to be able to connect, to act as the connector, to connect people, ideas, and resources. So let me give you a quick example of what I saw happen at BASF. And I will give you the example, and then I will explain why it is important and how this was the result of, you remember I talked about perspective, the unit that BASF had created. So this is the story of Basotect. It's a resin, a foam-like resin that BASF had been selling as a soundproofing product for construction companies or heat and soundproofing product for automotive companies and construction companies. So the story is that one day, one BASF sales rep was actually making a sales pitch to it happened to be a Japanese construction company, and something completely accidental happened. Somebody spilled a cup of coffee on the table where all the blueprints were put on top of the table for people to work together. And in a total panic, the sales rep kind of grabbed anything he could find, and it happened to be a slab of Basotect foam, and he wiped the mess on the table. I mean, the cup of coffee, the mess was cleaned up, but it just happened that the ink on the blueprints also was actually removed. It's only later that he realized that purely by accident, he had discovered a new quality of Basotect that nobody in the company knew about, which is that when Basotect is combined with water, it becomes a very powerful stain and dye remover. Now, this is the key critical moment. When he told his boss about it, his boss immediately connected him to all the scientists within BASF. And they went into a large, comprehensive search of all their customer database, looking for which company would be potentially interested in this new capability or this new quality that they had discovered about Basotect. And it took them 2 years to eventually develop a research partnership with P&G. And they developed a new product called Mr. Clean Magic Eraser which is, I mean, you may check your kitchen. I mean, I found it in my kitchen. This is a product that has become one of the best innovations at P&G and one of the fastest growing divisions at P&G. But here, what I want to emphasize is not simply the serendipity or the 3M kind of story about how it was discovered, the new property of BSF. But what I wanted to emphasize is the role that the middle manager played in connecting the sales rep with the scientist. This would have never happened in the old BSF. But after all of these middle managers were trained and equipped with new tools and concepts, going through the perspective coaching, they knew they had this habit of immediately connecting ideas to resources and innovators. Let me now finish with senior leaders. Senior leaders have also a very important role to play, in particular in the reframing process. And they have to act as, I call them, the chief reframing officer. They are the ones who have to put innovation at the core of strategy. And they're the ones who have to allow everybody to challenge the key assumptions and the key beliefs in the organization. And just as an example, I want to show you what Cenk Alper, this is the CEO of Corsa. I mean, he was CEO. I mean, this is a story when he was CEO of Corsa. And he not only was obsessed with innovation, he's actually one of the first senior executives that I trained in innovation. And much later, he became completely an advocate, an ambassador for innovation. What he did is that he actually changed the mission of the organization from being a manufacturer of fabric for tire companies. He changed even not only the purpose, but he changed the logo of the company, and he called it the reinforcer. For him, Corsa was not about reinforcing tires. It was about providing reinforcing solutions to any company, any industry that needs reinforcing solution. And this is how he suddenly, by changing the mission and the purpose of the organization, he allowed lots of people within Corsa to come up with new ideas about how Corsa could become the reinforcer. And this is how they entered new industries like the construction business. They entered the electronics business, reinforcing cables, and they even went into the aerospace business where they're reinforcing. They work for SpaceX and they did the reinforcement for the shuttle. So this is where the senior leaders actually can act in helping the organization question itself and reorient its purpose and mission. So just to kind of conclude, I would say stop thinking that innovation is driven by senior leaders or by specialists in R&D, or that you need to be a startup to be innovating. Anybody can innovate. And innovation is not only about big bang. Innovation is also about continuous and systematic innovation. And the way you unlock innovation is by focusing not on the outcome innovation, but on the process of innovating, creating activities for everyone in the organization, frontline employees, but also middle managers, senior leaders, all have a role to play in creating these innovating capabilities. And as you focus on innovating activities, you will hopefully generate innovations, the innovations that will nurture the future and the profitability of the organization. Anthony, I'm sorry, this may be a bit longer than you expected.
That's okay. It's okay. I've enjoyed it very much. I think everyone else has too. So we do want to take some time here for everyone to give you an opportunity to ask Professor Bensaou questions or add comments to the conversation. You feel free to put those in the chat or turn on your camera and microphone and ask them. Either one is fine. We'd love to have a little bit of conversation around this. So to kick that off, Professor, there are a couple of comments here I'll just read to you.
Yeah.
Um, Chander Nagpal, he said if he'd like to add another layer to sort of your early part of the presentation, and that is the layer of purely internal innovation, internal-led innovation versus ecosystem-led innovation. In other words, working with outside partners, external talent, incubators, startups, whatever. Yeah, would you like to comment on that, on how those two relate to each other or complement the process?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a very important point, and actually, I mean, for the sake of time, I couldn't delve into it. But I mean, for me, um, especially when you're talking about understanding the customer and the non-customer, this is something that you can definitely do with partners. I mean, and the important thing is to be able to co-create new ideas by being kind of collaborating and focusing on trying to understand the customer. And this is when I talk about the middle managers building the connectivity. The connectivity can be internal, but also outside. So, and for me, the ideas that I'm sharing can apply, and I've seen the organization actually effectively do that, can apply to your employees, but you can start to do this with your suppliers. I've seen organizations actually bring in their suppliers in some of the training or the coaching that we give. You understand all of these tools. The key idea here is that contrary to innovation, innovating is about focusing on the customer.
Mhm.
And you can focus on the customer together with your suppliers, your vendors, I've seen organization work with other companies in the industry, universities. I mean, the focal point is the customer, and then the ecosystem has to get in place. And you can see that by providing also tools, and I mean, in a sense, the tools, doesn't matter which tool you use, but the important thing about the tools is that they provide a language. And it's very important when you work with collaborators outside the organization is to share the same language.
Mhm.
And this is why I find it very useful when people go for a training or a certification on innovation, that they go not alone, but they go also with their ecosystem partners. Because then they share the same vocabulary, they share the same obsession about the customer, and they can reinforce each other.
Yeah, and
I
more
hope
and
I'm
more.
answering the question.
Yeah, more and more, organizations are seeing the value of working as part of a broader ecosystem. So, there's actually two parts to that, if you will. There's like there's the customer obsession and the co-creation. In your book, you talk about how BASF started doing that, and that really unlocked massive new value within BASF. I know a lot of other organizations, Hewlett Packard, HP, they've done a ton of that. Bringing in customers, they have labs where that's all they do is they bring in customers and they co-create together, and then getting the partners in your ecosystem to be a part of that whole conversation with your customers and get them on the same page using the same language can actually unlock tremendous value within the entire ecosystem. So yes.
By the way, just it's not even a joke, but what I typically do when people want to work with their partners is, we have again this obsession of a customer, and one of the key tools in the toolkit is about trying to codify what you think is the value that you're creating for your customer. So here I would get people to say, okay, let's consider your partner as a customer. So how can you create value for your partner?
Hmm.
And this is a very forceful, very powerful exercise that people can do in trying to understand that they cannot find the innovation alone, but by creating value for their partner and co-creating value to each other can help them actually, again, create value for the end customer.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about business model innovation. It often gives us the opportunity to unleash not just value for the customer for our business, but unleash value for other players in the ecosystem.
Absolutely.
So sometimes by
Absolutely.
just innovating our business model, we can actually unlock that new value across the
Yeah.
ecosystem. That's an excellent point. Taser Jaber had mentioned that We should study the life cycle of the product from production to delivery. The point being, we can innovate anywhere. We can innovate from, the raw materials to the manufacturing process to the end product to how we sell the product throughout the entire value chain. We can innovate any place. And I think you make a similar point in your.
Yes, actually, I'm so glad you mentioned that because I didn't mention it explicitly in the conversation. But actually, the three pillars, if you will, here is number one, that anybody can innovate. I call it the 3A. Anybody can innovate. You can innovate anywhere. You can innovate in your products, your processes, your services, even your functional areas. I've seen people innovate the HR. I mean, there's a nice example in the book on Corsa innovating in HR, for instance, or in the finance department. And the third A is that you are innovating at any time. So that innovating, remember, innovating is a habit.
Mhm.
It's not something that you do, when you hit a crisis. It's something that is, you have to find, depending on your metabolism, how often you do that. But every employee has to be engaged in some sort of innovating activity. Remember the Starwood guys, you spend some time, immersing yourself in your customer journey. And this is, this counts as innovating activity. So if everybody is always engaged at a regular level, doing some sort of innovation related activity, that is very powerful.
Yeah. And then William Santos in Brazil, he asks us a question: how to build a culture of innovation in extremely traditional markets where the strategic layers still do not see the possibilities and opportunities. I think that's another way of saying what happens when your senior executives just don't get it yet. I mean, how do we break through that barrier?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. Very, very interesting question. And actually, this is a question that gets asked to me when people see the Build to Innovate framework, the three roles and the three processes. And some people notice that this is not a vertical model. And I've seen organization build the innovating engine from the top down. I mean, this was very clear with Bayer, you saw that, or Corsa was actually driven by the gentleman I showed you, Cenk Alpert. But I've seen some organization that actually build it up from the bottom up. And the way it works is that basically in some units, somebody comes up with a great idea, and it doesn't have to be a disruption, but something quite innovative that people pay attention to, and then suddenly this is what I call make other people's jealous. So other middle managers would notice that this guy's team, kind of regularly generates nice ideas, and they're quite innovative, and they start to actually inquire what are these guys doing. So these organizations actually take pockets of innovation because the conversation here is really, especially I talk a lot to middle managers, and of course the main point to them is don't kind of look for the excuse that my senior leaders don't sponsor, don't think that innovation is important. You have a set of resources, you have a set of budgets, you have people, and within the frame of your own discretion, you can allow your people to actually innovate. It could be innovating in their own job. It could be innovating within the unit. But suddenly, if you develop a culture or an attitude towards innovation and people notice it, then what I've seen organizations do is actually institutionalize this, from the bottom up, by other people saying, oh, I want to be like Mike. And then suddenly you get some sort of a not a movement, but you start to see middle managers start to actually support each other, and without even noticing, at some point, senior leaders have to kind of acknowledge that something really important is happening, and that they need to kind of create some sort of a coordination platform for all of these pockets of innovation happening within the organization. So I think that William's point is very important. It doesn't have to be bottom up. I think that every middle manager who has a set of resources they are responsible for, they can start, building the innovating capabilities of their team, and either through people mixing with other people, rotating within the organization, or sheer outcome, results, they can start to actually signal to senior leaders that there's a capability that is being ignored here.
Hmm. Yeah, and then it can cascade from there and grow organically, and hopefully that
Absolutely.
you have a case now for making, or you have fodder for making the case for innovation becoming institutionalized because you show
Right.
successes, that have
Right.
happened. So
And,
that's
and, and,
excellent.
and yeah, yeah. And by the way, here, I mean, if to be candid, these transformations that I'm talking about, even those like the one at Corsa, which I just finished a case study on them, and the conglomerate overlooking Corsa, these transformations, even top down, can take a few years. I mean, we're not talking about creating a culture of innovation in with two memos and three emails. I mean, this is something, like we say, this is about cultural transformation, and even to institutionalize from the bottom, a culture of innovation takes some time, but it requires really um, uh, um, a guided process. I mean, it requires a strategy and persistence, and I've seen it happen in many organizations, actually.
Absolutely. Yeah, it does take time. It's not an overnight transformation. It does take time. We got several more questions if you're open to continue going.
Yes, please.
Okay, so Gada Shams asks, can innovation in public sector ever be separated from digital transformation? And I think what they mean is, so much of what they're focused on is service, and so much of the service now is all about digital transformation. But, I think you kind of maybe alluded to this already. Innovation can happen in so many areas of the organization, HR, finance, and others. So, I don't know if you've worked a lot with public sector organizations, but any comments on that?
Yes. Well, my first comment is that I did work with public organizations. I mean, not non-profit organizations, but also government agencies. I mean, without naming them, I mean, in Singapore,
Hmm.
in uh, in Singapore, and in Abu Dhabi, and also non-profit in the US, and I would say that. I mean, again, if you start with the premise that this is all innovating, remember, is all about customers. I mean, they have customers. They might not have a concept of price or competition, but they have customers. So they can engage in any kind of activities about looking about understanding the customers and creating additional value for the customers. Now, when it comes to digital, I mean, just like private organizations, many of the processes generate and interaction with the customer generate lots of data, and data might be the next fuel of the economy and public services as well. So I think that they're not protected away from the digital transformation. I think that customers are likely to expect that, number one. And second is that public services will be getting access to large amount of data that they can start to analyze and use again digital technologies to improve the experience of the customers.
Hmm.
So for me, I mean, we could go into more details, but I think the digital transformation and innovating with digital applies to public service as much as private sector.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Here's another question from Chander. In my experience, such good endeavors sometimes come to a halt over time and end up becoming just innovation theater rather than part of the DNA. Can you share an example of an organization who has done this consistently over decades and done well and achieved results consistently over decades?
Well, this is a very profound comment, by the way, and
Yeah.
I mean, again, I've studied many of these organizations over time, and I keep actually even after the book, I keep following some of them.
Hmm.
So I'll give you maybe a couple examples that, I mean, I'll just name them and then we can go into details if necessary. I would say that Samsung, again, when you think about the culture, we were talking about culture before the start of the webinar. I mean, in an environment like the Korean culture, Samsung had done extremely well becoming an innovating organization. Maybe not, you may not think about them as innovation, breakthrough, disruptive, but in terms of innovating and bringing new products, new services, new technologies very fast, I think they've been very good. I mean, the other example, and those who are interested, they can find the case study that I wrote. I mean, this Turkish conglomerate called Sabancı and Corsa, they've been not only innovating in the tire business, but they've expanded this culture of innovation across businesses and they've started new businesses in energy. They started new businesses in sustainability and green.
Mm-hmm.
But well, I want to react to this because I think this is a very profound comment. What I've seen, and this is the thing to be very careful about, is that as much as I say that senior leaders have to drive, the reframing process, what we might see sometimes is that a CEO or an executive team might be leading an initiative around innovation, and then their successors might feel the need to establish their territory and bring something else.
Mm-hmm.
And in the process, they might even sometimes, I've seen in some organization, brutally kill, the great transformation process that the previous team had done, not because it was bad or it was not working, is because as a new CEO, as a new senior leadership team, you have to have a different label. You have to create your territory around something different. So there's a danger there. So this is why I think it's very important to institutionalize things and to make it embedded so that it becomes second nature. I think the successes I've seen is when, I mean, actually a very good example I've seen, some of these organizations like BSF had created Perspective, this unit that would develop the processes and the techniques for innovation. They would gather techniques and methods from around the world, and then they would actually develop their own and teach that and coach that to within the company.
Mm-hmm.
And so after a while, this unit, central unit, actually was removed. And when I first heard about it, I was shocked. I thought, oh, innovation is not the center anymore. And they explained to me that it's not the case. In fact, it has become part of the HR in induction process. So it had been so successful that they didn't need the infrastructure anymore. It had become second nature for many people, and any new hire would, part of the initiation process and the induction process through HR would have 2-3 days of training on innovation. So sometimes, and this is the goal for me. The goal is not to forever have the senior leaders, advocating for innovation. The goal is that it becomes so much second nature to the organization that you don't need to speak about it. It is, I mean, the very good example we have of similar story is the movement on quality. Mm-hmm. There was a whole movement around Six Sigma, about TQM, but now nobody talks about it. Not because it faded away. It's because in many organizations, it's embedded, it's there. Absolutely. We don't need to talk about it. Mm-hmm. This makes sense?
I think that absolutely. I think that's the goal for innovation. I think we're still not there yet, but and
of course,
I lived through this myself. To Chandler's point, I mean, I was the vice president of product innovation for a company, a small company owned by a British holding company. We had a CEO. We had a very strong, vibrant R&D and innovation program. Then we got a new president who came in. He shut down the whole R&D and
Yeah.
innovation, right?
Yes.
So
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
you can fight that, but it comes and goes, and
Yes. Yes.
it
Yes.
struggles depends on their different perspective. And this president was a Harvard MBA, but he was focused on the execution
Yeah.
engine
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
squeezing everything out of it. As often is the case in holding companies, but in any event, my dream is to what yours is to get to that point where innovation has become embedded, so much embedded in industry the way that quality has it. It's just an embedded part of what we're doing in our DNA.
Right. Right.
Let me shift over. We got a couple of people with hands up who want to jump in and ask questions directly, and we'll start with Brian Mattamore, my friend Brian. Brian, tell us what your question is.
My question, I don't know if it's easy or hard, but it's quite specific. What were the specific instructions to the 64 teams at Starwood that enabled them, with the pictures and the journals that enabled them to come back with their ideas?
Yes, very, 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 very nice. Thank you. I mean, the instructions were very simple. Is just roam the streets of Paris and whatever you see that kind of catches your eyes, try to take pictures. And well, in fact, they had no. Actually, you're totally right. I mean, actually, the before we started the conference, they were introduced to the 8 values, the key values of Starwood at the time. And so the exercise, the conference was also about trying to get people to internalize those key core values of the company. So in fact, when they were sent out, of course, it was totally open-ended. Just walk around, whatever you see, take a picture or take a note or whatever. But they were kind of looking for instances of things that would reinforce the 8 values, if you will. So there was actually, this is a very interesting question. I've never been asked that. I never thought about it actually, but in fact, it makes total sense what you're raising here, Brian, is that it was free floating, but they had some sort of a focal point. And the focal point is, in my language, would be the frame of the company. What is the purpose? What is the mission of the organization? And can you observe your customer within the kind of the general understanding of what is the purpose? Because what I've seen, and it's kind of mentioned in the book, the CEO of Fiskars was telling me that one of the problem with innovation, especially when you let go people and let them free wheel like that, they come up with all sorts of ideas that have nothing to do with what I'm trying to do. So in a sense, he was saying, and this is maybe what you're trying to allude to, Brian, is that you need some sort of a frame so that people understand what is reasonable, what kind of innovations we're looking for. We're not trying to kind of go into science fiction but one focus is definitely the customer or the non-customer, and the second focus is the purpose, the mission of the organization. I think that would be my answer.
Great. Well, thank you, Ben. It forces me to promote the GInI book here, The Other Side of Growth.
Yes.
Which we all co-wrote on innovators' responsibilities in emerging world. And I hope this doesn't sound too self-promotional, but chapter 7, the one I wrote, was organizational values, an essential tool for creating a culture of innovation.
Yeah.
So there we go. Thank you for the values example.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you. I like the question. Very good. Very good.
Yes.
Thank you.
And so our next question comes from Farah Nimini.
Yeah. Hi,
Go
Anthony.
ahead.
Hi, Ben. Yeah, Prof. Ben, thank you so much for
Hi,
the
Farah.
informative presentation today. I have a question about the Anywhere A in your AAA slogan. So we have discussed that innovation shouldn't really be just in products, in services, in business models. It can also be in your, the administrative functions like finance, HR, or even IT, let's say. My question is, so for those internally oriented, if we may say, innovations, the value here that we are creating and capturing, would not be for the customer, right? Because you repetitively mentioned that this innovative engine is customer side oriented, or the customer side view. What about stakeholders, like employees, like we mentioned the network outside the stakeholders and so on? What's your point of view
Okay.
in this?
Okay. Yeah, very good question. Let me clarify. This is very important. I'm so glad you asked this question. Here, the customer, when I say customer side view versus supplier side view, I mean customer in a generic sense. For me, a customer is anybody or anything that you're trying to make happy. I mean, it's easier to think about somebody, but you try to create value for somebody or something. So you can see that a customer can be a person, can be an organization, can be a process, right? So, and it can be external customer, but also internal customer. So for me, for instance, if you say, oh, HR, does it have customers? Well, of course, HR has lots of customers, lots of internal customers. The employees are customers, the managers are customers, top management is a customer, external customers like students who want to join the company, looking for a great company to work for. These are all customers. So can you innovate for each of them? Yes, because your question is to try to understand their needs and how can you create superior value for them, and then you can roll out the process. But the starting point is always the same. Who am I trying to create value for? And by the way, I might send it to Anthony when it comes out, but we're developing a web application to help people actually identify or codify the value for their customers. So the very simple question, if I were to do the exercise now, is to ask you whether you're in HR or whether you're in B2C. Why would your customer buy your product, or why would the customer enjoy working with you? Why would people enjoy working with employees? Why do they like to work with HR? And then you could come up with a list. And then the question is, can we develop a better understanding to improve this value proposition to HR? And you can see that as soon as you say, oh, by the way, a little joke. I don't know if you're going to laugh about that, but my wife always complains to me when I do some of these exercises at the dinner table and talking to her as if she was my customer. She says, I'm not your customer, but I say, I'm trying to make you happy. So this is what it is. It's the customer is somebody you're trying to make happy. And by the way, we've used, mostly with MBA students, we used these exercises where people were trying to use the innovation tools to innovate themselves as an individual, like to get a better job or to be a better friend or whatever. But again, coming back to your question, Farah, as soon as you can identify something that you're trying to create value for, somebody or something you're trying to make happy, we're talking. This is innovating for me, and it can be internal or external. It can be B2B, B2C. Does it make sense, Farah?
Sure, makes perfect sense. Thank you so much.
Yes, and I think of innovation too as value creation. Anytime I can create or unlock new value for someone, then I have innovated for them. That's what innovation is adding more value, in a new way.
Yeah. And this is, again, coming back to kind of, take some distance from the small answers, is that this is why I call for a different narrative, because the traditional narrative we had about innovation is that innovation is about products, it's about technology. Innovation, again, I'm not going to start again, but you see, and that innovation is done by some specialists. So we lost track of the fact that, by the way, all what I'm saying was happening even before I looked at it. Companies have been innovating in processes and functions all the time. it was not part of the narrative. We were, this was continuous improvement, or we had a different label for it. But I'm trying to just say, put a label on it and put a language on it and saying this is part of innovation. If a company can reduce its cost structure by 2%, I mean, it could be equivalent to developing a product that is successful in the market that would generate the equivalent amount of revenues. I mean, again, this obsession with products and technology has kind of distracted us from innovation in other parts of the organization and other actors who actually can innovate. I mean, this is also another aspect that I discovered was really underestimated, is the innovating capability that lies there for free across the whole organization, and people just not tapping into that, not completely ignoring that in some cases. And I'm not saying that innovation is not about, it's not also about disruption, is not also about breakthrough and big bang stories, but I'm saying there's also another story that is also important, which is continuous and systematic innovation by everyone in the organization.
Very good, excellent. So another question comes from Gada Shams. Gada, would you like to ask your question?
Yes. Thank you for the insightful session. Really, really interesting and very informative. My question, I'll be bringing it along from the chat with a little bit of adding on it. I was wondering if, as you said, that the innovating process is throughout the organization. However, should we have a separate team for innovation from the various departments? And if there should be a chief innovation officer, where should his place lie in the organization chart? How would we apply this for a business and for an NGO?
So let me kind of start with the business, and I'm not sure whether the NGO would be different, but again, the idea here is that everyone, ideally, of course, not everyone will want to engage, but everyone should be, number one, given permission. Actually, let me add another 3 letters. What people need to innovate is fundamentally 3 things. They need to be allowed, which is basically given permission to innovate. They need to feel that they are capable, which means that they can do it, that they have the time, the resources, the training to do it. And third, they need to feel motivated, that when they come up with an idea, I mean, they are recognized for it. I mean, whether it's bad or good, but they are recognized, and when it's a good one, that they are actually acknowledged or recognized, or maybe even rewarded with some form of incentive, either emotional or actually financial. So for me, it's all about allowing people to engage in innovating. Oh, sorry. Actually, can you remind me the start of your question?
Should we have a separate innovation team from the various departments?
Yes.
And where should the chief innovation officer be in the organization chart?
Yes. So for me, coming back to this, innovating, what is innovating? Innovating is that people have a regular job, right? And most of their job is actually involved in execution. But everyone should be given the permission, if they choose to, and be encouraged by the senior leaders, by the boss, to actually engage in some form of innovating activity. And it can be very simple. So you saw the Starwood example, just spending time with your customer, whether it's internal or external, and just spending some time observing what's going on and reporting to the team. It could be like when there's innovation team project being started in your business or outside in another division, to volunteer to be the representative of your division, because we need cross-disciplinary teams. There are many ways that people can get engaged. If there's innovation training or certification program, volunteer for that. I mean, that's what we're talking about. Is that people have their regular job, but on a regular their execution job, but on a regular basis, they are encouraged to engage in some sort of activity which is related to the innovating engine. So now what it does is that it trains. You see, if you think about the brain as one that is really dedicated and very strong, very powerful on execution, by doing this, they are actually developing their understanding, the ability to listen to the customer with empathy, seeing some of the things that the customer doesn't say. So they're developing their innovating brain. So I think this is very important. I mean, and of course you have, on top of this kind of habit that every employee gets involved in some sort of activity, developing their muscle. It's like you go to the gym and you strengthen your muscles by using equipment being the tools. You have, so the innovating engine is the one that is coordinating and making sure that everybody gets involved in all that. But also you have an infrastructure, like I explained, with Bayer, where when people generate an idea or they want to work on an idea, they can call upon a coach or a specialist. And actually, this coach could be somebody who conducted a successful innovation project somewhere else in the organization. So these people could come and coach your team in using some tools or some techniques, some process to develop new ideas. So you can see that you have this community of experts, community of innovation coaches or experts that exist, and you have this infrastructure. You remember, this infrastructure is on top of the execution. So it means that these people have dual roles. So they have their execution role, but at the same time, they may be coordinating innovation. If somebody says, okay, I need somebody who knows how to innovate in this field, you would be able to connect them. So this is what we're talking about. And of course, you need somebody at the senior level. And most of the time, and I mean, especially, it's better if it's somebody very senior at the board level, because it will legitimize innovation. It will tell people that this is important. It will be people who have a sense of authority and the credibility to actually, advocate for innovation. They will be able to have access to some resources, and they could be, the chairman of a committee where all of these ideas that have been selected through the process. Usually, it's a funnel process. And again, you have people who are, as a dual role, responsible of sitting on the committee to review some of these ideas. And when these ideas come to the final stage, then they come to this committee at the top that kind of, can decide on funding. So again, I hope, Gada, I'm answering your question. I believe that the core is this mass. Right, the core of the engine is this mass of people within the organization, who on a regular basis, and it doesn't seem to be noticed, but they are developing the innovating capability. By the way, it tends to enrich their life. It makes their job much more interesting. And you might, by this mass, identify some people who are extremely creative. But it is this mass of people who are always engaged in learning more about their customers, coming up with new ideas, however small or big they are. And then you have this infrastructure, this formal structure that I talked about, where people can start, convincing their boss that they want to work as a team on a specific project. So now the project is something that is not just, just proposing an idea, but actually is something really structured, that may follow some templates, and they may be coached by somebody at the central unit or somebody else in another organization. And then these different projects within organizations are put into competition, and they come together at the end when the executive committee kind of selects some of these ideas. And what I've seen in many of these organizations, they all have some sort of a structure like that, and out of these maybe 7 to 10 projects that get selected every year, they sometimes have like a new business unit that emerges from that, or a new product that emerges from that. So there are two components to my answer. One is that you have this culture building, right? This building of the general capability of everyone. Everyone, we know that everyone has innovating capabilities. The problem is that as soon as they walk into the office, they turn it off. They just do what they're told. So why not actually allow that to be expressed, actually give them an additional training to maybe leverage their capability and strengthen their innovative kind of, capability as a worker. Then, so that's the mass, right? You have a better HR capability, which is enhanced, more innovative. And then you have this structure where specific projects, small and big, are developed, coached, and put into competition with hopefully a few every year or every 2 years that translate in something that is going to be commercialized or something that will be implemented within the organization. And for that, you need that structure that I was talking about, and definitely somebody at the level, whether this person is called a chief innovation officer or some other name. But the important thing is that people know that this is something important to the organization, that there's a leading coalition at the top that is watching for that this is not something that is going to go under the radar. There's some people actually paying attention, watching, monitoring, making sure that people get involved. That there's a process of competition to actually get these projects, and basically that if I have an idea, if I feel as an employee, a random employee, so this is one of the questions I very often ask in a company when I engage with them, is that I ask them, can you tell me how innovation happens in this organization? And very often people either tell me, go to talk to the R&D people, or go to talk to the senior leaders, but people very often don't know if they wanted to get involved, where they would go. But if you get to a point where anybody in the organization, if they want to get involved, they know exactly where to go and what are the steps, then you're there. I think.
Okay. Excellent answer. And thank you, Professor Bensaou. I appreciate that. So in the interest of time, we've been on here for 1 hour and 40 minutes now. I think it's time for us to bring it to a conclusion.
Thank you.
And I just want to thank you so much for your time and contributions. Do you have any final closing comments you would like to make?
It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed the questions. Some of them were really actually insightful. I think some of them I hadn't thought about the problem that way, but
yes,
that's part of exchanging and learning from each other. Thank you so much.
It is indeed, and that's the purpose of our being here. So yes, thank you for being our guest, and thank you for all the attendees for being with us today. And for those who watch the recording afterwards, we appreciate your participation as well. And so with that, I want to thank everyone and say have a great rest of your day. This concludes our webinar today. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank
you. All right, thank you.